Welcome to Psalms Layer by Layer, a project of Scriptura. In this video, we'll walk through the top 3 exegetical issues in Psalm 78. These are issues that anyone who's doing serious study of the Psalms is going to have to deal with, and each of them impacts how you understand the meaning of the Psalm as a whole. In Psalm 78, the top 3 issues are the syntactic function of ze in verse 54, the participants in verses 63 through 64, and the identity of the Lord's adversaries in verse 66. Are these foreign nations, or are they actually the rebellious Israelites? The first issue is the syntactic function of ze in verse 54. In the King James Version, verse 54 says, "And he brought them to the border of his sanctuary, even to this mountain, Har Ze, which his right hand had purchased." According to the KJV, ze is a demonstrative pronoun, this mountain. And if we follow this interpretation of the syntax, it could mean that the psalmist is situated at a specific mountain, maybe Mount Zion in Jerusalem. This would clarify the setting of the psalm. But the ESV says, "And he brought them to his holy land, to the mountain which, Har Ze, the mountain which his right hand had won." So according to the ESV, ze functions like a relative pronoun, not this mountain, but the mountain which. And modern translations are split between these two interpretations. The demonstrative interpretation, this mountain, is a natural way to read this phrase because ze is almost always a demonstrative pronoun in biblical Hebrew. When ze follows a noun, it prototypically functions as a demonstrative. This thing, hadavar hazeh, or this person, ha'ish hazeh. And so it's not surprising that most of the ancient versions read ze as a demonstrative. The Septuagint, for example, has this mountain. The issue with the demonstrative interpretation is that there's no definite article. Normally, whenever ze functions as a demonstrative, both ze and the noun it modifies has the definite article. So, for example, ha'ish hazeh. So here we would expect hahar hazeh, but instead we just get har ze. Hebrew grammars will cite some exceptions to this rule, cases where the article is lacking, but in our view, even these exceptions can be explained in other ways. And if you're looking for details here, you can visit our website, linked in the description below, where we discuss some of these alleged exceptions. In our view, because there's no definite article, ze more likely functions as a relative, the mountain which his right hand won, just like the ESV has translated it. An important passage here is the Song of the Sea in Exodus 15. Psalm 78 seems to be echoing this song whenever it describes how the Lord led his people out of Egypt and brought them to his mountain. And Exodus 15 gives us multiple examples of a Zayin pronoun functioning as a relative. So for example, Exodus 15:13 says, "You have led the people whom you have redeemed, Am zu ga'alta. You have guided them by your strength to your holy abode." And verse 17 says, "Till the people pass by whom you have purchased, Am zu kanita. You will bring them in and plant them on your own mountain." So here are some clear examples of a Zayin pronoun functioning as a relative. But you'll notice that the pronoun here in these Exodus 15 examples is not ze, like we have in Psalm 78, but zu. And zu is much more likely to function as a relative pronoun. That's true. But there are also some examples where ze seems to function like a relative pronoun, just like zu does. One clear example is Proverbs 23:22, which says, "Listen to your father who gave you life. La'avicha ze yiladecha." Another example is Job 19:19. "All my intimate friends abhor me, and those whom I loved, ze ahavti, have turned against me." What we have in Psalm 78:54 is similar to these examples. And so we conclude, on the basis of these similar examples, the lack of the article, and the parallels with Exodus 15, that ze in this verse has a relative function, the mountain or the hill country which his right hand acquired. If asked to rate our level of confidence in this view on a scale of A to D, A being the highest, D being the lowest, we would give it a B rating. The second issue in Psalm 78 has to do with the participants in verses 63 and 64. Who do the pronouns in these verses refer to? Here's how the ESV translates these verses. "Fire devoured their young men, and their young women had no marriage song. Their priests fell by the sword, and their widows made no lamentation. But now listen to how the CEB translates these verses. Fire devoured his young men, and his young women had no wedding songs. God's priests were killed by the sword, and his widows couldn't even cry. So according to the ESV, all the pronouns refer to the people, to Israel, while according to the CEB, they refer to the Lord. In Hebrew, all of the pronouns in these verses are grammatically singular. Bachurav, uvetulotav, kohanav, va'almanotav, all third-person singular pronouns. And the fact that the pronouns are singular is one good reason to think that they refer to the Lord, his young men, his priests, as the CEB has it. Throughout the rest of the psalm, Israel is consistently referred to with plural pronouns. To give just one example, verse 52 says, "He led out his people like a flock and guided them in the wilderness like a herd." So the singular pronoun in amo is used to refer to the Lord, and a plural pronoun, vayenahagem, is used to refer to his people Israel. And this is consistent, not just throughout the psalm, but specifically from verse 52 all the way to verses 63 and 64. Pronouns for Israel are consistently plural, and pronouns for the Lord are consistently singular. And the line just before verses 63 to 64 says, "And against his inheritance, uvanachalato, he, that is the Lord, raged." And it makes sense, following this line and in accordance with the larger pattern, that the singular suffixes in verses 63 and 64 would refer to the Lord. The reason why some reject this interpretation and have the suffixes refer instead to Israel is that it seems kind of odd to talk about the Lord punishing his young men and his young women, his priests and his widows. It is a little strange sounding, but it seems to be intentional. As the previous verse says, the Lord raged against his inheritance. In other words, the psalm wants to make clear that the people are still his people. The priests are his priests, the young women and the young men are still his. And although he's punishing them for their rebellion, he hasn't completely given up on them. In fact, the psalm will end with the Lord's choice of David, quote, "to shepherd Jacob, his people, and to shepherd Israel, his inheritance." Instead of abandoning his people, the Lord responds to their disobedience by giving them a good king to shepherd them. So in conclusion, we take the pronouns in verses 63 and 64 as referring to the Lord, and we give this conclusion a B rating. The last issue in Psalm 78 is the identity of the Lord's adversaries in verse 66. So verse 66 says, "And he struck back his adversaries. He gave them eternal shame." And the question here is, who are the Lord's adversaries in this verse? Some interpreters think that the word adversaries here refers to Israelites. The preceding verses are about the defeat of the Israelites at Shiloh. As we saw in the previous issue, verses 62, 63, 64 talk about the Lord raging against his inheritance, his priests falling by the sword, and so on. And so some think that the description in verse 66, "and he struck back his adversaries," is continuing the description of the previous verses where the Lord destroyed the temple at Shiloh. One grammatical argument for this interpretation is that the verb in verse 66 is a vayiktol, vayach, and he struck. And vayiktol usually marks discourse continuity. And so the grammatical form might suggest that the description in this verse continues the description in the previous verses, where the Lord rages against his people. His people have become his adversaries. But in our view, it's more likely that the adversaries in this verse refer to Israel's foreign enemies, and especially the Philistines. Here's where it's helpful to step back and look at the poetic structure of Psalm 78. We'll give a summary sketch of it here, and you can visit our website for more details. Verses 1 through 8 introduce the poem and present it as a riddle or a set of puzzling problems. And then the psalm has two main parts. Verses 9 through 39 describe a sequence of God doing wonders for his people sinning against him, and then him responding with anger and punishment. And then verses 40 to 64 describe the same basic sequence. God does wonders for his people sin against him, and then he responds with anger and punishment. And this is the riddle, this is the puzzling problem. How is this pattern going to be broken? How is the Lord going to fix this problem and make for himself a faithful people? Well, just as the first 8 verses give an introduction to the problem, the last 8 verses, 65 through 72, give the solution to the problem. The Lord rejects the northern tribes as the leaders of his covenant people, and instead he chooses David to shepherd them. And this structure is important for this issue because it means that verse 66, which describes the Lord striking his adversaries, verse 66 actually belongs to the final section of the psalm. It isn't a continuation of the judgment in the previous section. Instead, it's part of the solution section. The turning point from judgment to solution is in verse 65, where the Lord arises like one who had been asleep, like a warrior, it says, shouting from the effects of wine, and he struck back his adversaries. The psalm is recalling what happened in the Samuel narrative. After the destruction of Shiloh and the exile of the ark, God rose up and he struck the Philistines. And he brought the ark, eventually, to Zion. And he would go on to strike down all of David's enemies, establishing David's rule and giving rest to his people. So in our view, the adversaries in verse 66 are the foreign enemies of God's people, especially the Philistines, though not limited to them. And we give this interpretation a B rating. How we resolve each of these issues shapes how we see the psalm as a whole. The issue with Ze in verse 54 affects how we see the setting of the psalm. Is the psalmist speaking from Zion, from this mountain to which the Lord brought his people? Well, he might be. The psalm is definitely written from a southern, pro-David, pro-Zion perspective, but the Ze pronoun in verse 54 probably has a relative function, the mountainous area or the hill country which his right hand acquired and in which he settled his people. The issue with the participants in verses 63 to 64 really brings us to the heart of the psalm. These verses describe how the Lord rages against his inheritance, punishing his young men and women, his priests and his widows. The repetition of his stands out, and that's the point. Despite their rebellion, his people are still his people, his inheritance. And so there has to be some solution to their continuous rebellion other than their permanent, complete rejection. How is the Lord going to solve this puzzling problem? And that's where the last section of the psalm comes in. Verses 65 and 66 say that the Lord rose up and struck back his adversaries. The adversaries in this verse are the foreign enemies of his people who captured the ark and took it into exile. That could have been the end of the story, a permanent rejection of his people. But instead, as we read in Samuel, the Lord rises up, he strikes the Philistines, and he brings the ark back into his land, and eventually to Zion, the place where David will rule and shepherd his people. This has been the Exegetical Issues video for Psalm 78, in which we explore the difficult and important issues that interpreters of the psalm are likely to encounter. All of our videos are offered free of charge, thanks to the generosity of our donors. You can visit us at Scriptura.org to learn more.